Welcome back to Your 1230, the only podcast where our guests tell their story with the help of 12 questions in just 30 minutes. I'm your host, Mike Salitro, and today we are very excited to be speaking with Louie Rousso. Louie is originally from New York, now lives in the South Shore of Massachusetts. Went to Quinnipiac to study broadcast journalism, and from there worked in radio at 92.3 Now, producer on Rollin' with Nick Cannon, and did promotions for WFAN. He's also worked in television production, producer on Born to Explore, and filmed a hike to the summit of Kilimanjaro. He was also nominated for a Daytime Emmy. Currently, he's the director of leasing at RK Centers. Louis, welcome. We are really excited to be speaking with you.
Thrilled to be here, Mike. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, of course. And that is not only a lot of stuff, it's a lot of different stuff. I'm going to start here. If I asked a good friend of yours what you do, would they know?
Honestly, at this point, no, I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
think so. I have a closest group of friends from New York, and I don't think they completely know what I do, which is fine.
Okay. So if you meet somebody new, then what do you tell them?
Commercial real estate.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in the leasing side of things, but to get into that, like if they start asking questions, I'll dive a little deeper. But commercial real estate is fine. But um, to start saying I'm in leasing, I lease retail space, digging too deep, it's just, I lose them pretty quick. So I'm in commercial real estate.
Understandably so. So you've taken a circuitous path, certainly, to get there, but a lot of great stuff along the way. Was the goal studying broadcast journalism to be in front of the camera? Did you like production? What was the idea back in at Quinnipiac?
It was to be more in front of the camera. While at Quinnipiac, I was involved in oh, by the way, the national champion Quinnipiac men's hockey team, I should mention, just throwing that out there. Um,
Thank you for that.
yeah, of course. While there, I was involved in in radio programs and as many TV programs as I can, news, especially sports. I was an anchor on a show called Sports Pause, where we did Quinnipiac sports, what was going on, and it was a very college level, elementary level news sports show, and it was fun. I mean, it was mirrored after Sports Center when Sports Center was like the biggest thing on TV, and before everything was streaming. So it was a great time.
So I will try to help us from aging ourselves, but yes, I remember that time where you had to watch Sports Center to know what was going on, and it was a big show. And same with us at college. We modeled our sports shows after it, so that is a big deal to get on. So that was a great experience. Uh, I also want to reference Quinnipiac, not only the national hockey champions, they were, if I get this correct, they won their conference for basketball, but were not allowed to play in March Madness, correct?
I believe that is correct. Yeah, they didn't make the tournament, but they won the conference.
Okay. So just so it's little bit of a balancing act there. So glad the hockey team came out on top. But back to what we're talking about. So from being in front of the camera on a college campus, there's lots of kids that do that in undergrad right now that they want to kind of make the leap into some sort of media. You were able to do it in many different ways. Did you feel that doing kind of that as an undergrad and then pursuing it was the way to go? Were you lucky? Were you talented? How did you make that transition?
I mean, I think with any story, there is an element of luck that comes along with it. You got to be the kind of the right place, the right time. So, I mean, I landed a job at the promotions department at a relatively new radio station, and you don't need a PhD to be hired for a $10 an hour job where you travel around the tri-state area handing out stickers. But I just needed to get my foot in the door somewhere. So after college, I applied to a bunch of different jobs. Obviously, I applied to ESPN. Going to Quinnipiac and having ESPN in the backyard was everybody in the communications department's dream was to work at ESPN. I didn't get hired there, obviously, and so I moved back to New York and got a job at in the promotions department. And I always feel like from there, that's once you get your foot in there, I don't necessarily have like a ton of talent in any one particular area, but you just kind of work. You kind of work your ass off until you get where you want to go.
Now, I love that answer because you hit on two things that I think a lot of people would overlook. First, the willingness to admit that there's luck involved in these things. And the second, that you were smart enough to not only get your foot in the door, but to take advantage of that opportunity. Because I feel that, even knowing myself at 22, I don't know if I would have realized what a great opportunity it was and kind of worked really hard to get to that next level. So well done for excelling in the promotions role. Just so we can level set with anybody listening to this, what does driving around the tri-state as someone who is working promotions, what does that entail? What's a normal day look like?
So there's not really, oftentimes I wouldn't know what day it was because there was no like Monday to Friday. This was a lot of weekend stuff, a lot of early morning stuff, a lot of late night stuff, promotions, whether go to a concert, Jay-Z and Eminem are playing at Yankee Stadium. Get there before, put up the banners, and we have things you put, little signs that you wave around and say like 92.3 now, like Yankee Stadium or whatever it may be. Get there and give them out to everybody as if it's a token for coming in the door. Um, it was that. It was late, early mornings at go to Jones Beach and hand out beads or bring the prize wheel and everybody who's at Jones Beach. Have them spin the prize wheel. Have them talk about at the time Justin Bieber and Lady Gaga and acts like that. So that's really kind of what it was. It was a lot in New Jersey, not as much in Manhattan because for all the people in Manhattan, you could drive down the road in Westchester, New Jersey, or Connecticut in a purple suburban with 92.3 now all over it, and you'll get looks all over the place. And you could basically in Manhattan, you could run somebody over in that same vehicle, and no one will bat an eye. So people in Manhattan were not quite as impressed as people in the suburbs, and rightfully so. I mean, it's just a different atmosphere. So it was a lot of that, handing out, free stuff. Everyone loves free stuff. Yeah, you got any T-shirts? You got any stickers? You got anything? And people would be all over that.
People do love free stuff. Do you
Yeah.
have a go-to story if someone asks, like, what was that like, or what was the craziest thing, or what was the one thing that jumps out when you think back to driving that purple suburban?
Thinking back to those days, was really kind of like the lack of sleep I would get. Um, and I was young at the time. I was like, early 20s, so I was more able to do that. Um, I would start doing as I became a little bit more involved in the radio station. I would also be like a phone screener, assistant producer on like the late night shows. So that would go, let's say, from 10 to 2. There was a cot. So I grabbed the cot, put it in the promotions closet, in like the prize closet, maybe sleep for like 2 or 3 hours. And then, 6 a.m. or whatever it may be, we're getting ready to get all the gear together for a promotion out at the beach in New Jersey. So really, it was not knowing what day it was, barely ever knowing what time it was, not knowing when I'm getting my next food or anything like that. But just like the chaos. But at the same time, looking back, it was awesome. I mean, it was tough at the time, but looking back, it was really awesome. Just constantly going and constantly meeting people and shaking people's hands and giving out stuff and just seeing smiles on people's faces. Um, Looking back, it was a really good time.
Your face just lights up as you talk about it. So even if I didn't want to believe you, I can just tell that it really was a good time and a good memory for you. So I'm glad that I asked. Uh, from there, you either met Nick Cannon, went to work from him. How did that happen?
So he hosted a morning show at 92.3. So I started when I first got there, not knowing anything, started promotions and doing like traveling around the tri-state. And then I was asked to be an assistant producer on the late night show. From there, they saw that I was relatively competent and, I was not a total moron. So they asked me to join the morning show after a while. And what I was doing on there was coming up with bits, phone screening, um, especially phone screening. Like if we had a topic, for instance, he would say, "What are you really scared of? Call us up at 9230923," and I would pick up the phone 923 and I would hear what they were saying. So they would say, like, they'd give a topic, for instance, "What are you really scared of?" And then the host, it was Nick Cannon and a girl from North Carolina named Sarah Lee, and they would banter back and forth. And while they bantered, the phone calls would be coming in. So I would screen a person if they sounded like they could, not stutter all over the place, not swear, and not sound like an idiot on live radio. I'd put them through to the host, and then Nick would ask them about what's going on with them. So this was, I guess, Nick Cannon before he has, like 12 kids. He was married to Mariah Carey at the time, and he was actually, they were pregnant with their, I believe it, if my memory serves me correctly, it was twins, Rock and Roll, I think they were named. At that time, also, he was filming American Got Talent. So he would do the show oftentimes from Los Angeles at like 3 o'clock in the morning in a little booth by himself. And I think this was like the early days of video conferencing, pretty much. So the co-host and the board operator would be in New York. They'd be looking at Nick on the camera, and they run a show like he was sitting right there. And it actually, it worked really well. But he was a super, super cool guy, like very, very down to earth. Worked harder than anybody I'd ever met in my entire life, and was really, really impressed by that. And just a good guy.
That's a great story, and you definitely seem to catch him at the right time in his career. And it's great to hear that he's such a hard worker and diligent to get to that level where you've got to keep to be up at 3 a.m. in a booth by yourself, and I'm sure to have the energy and not to let anybody know that you're not in the room there with co-hosts, or you got to be good at what you do, or at least put the time in and get the reps in to be
right,
be convincing. So a producer does a lot of things behind the scenes basically to make the show go. Besides fielding those calls, what was the 2 or 3 hours on air like for you?
So it was a 4-hour show. It was from 6 to 10, Monday to Friday. One of the things later during my stint there was we would have this thing called, like, I think it was Cannon's Countdowns. It would be like the top 5 songs in New York at that time on the charts. And we'd pick a topic in the tri-state, like the best pizza places in the tri-state. So I would cold call all these pizza places and say, we want to have you announce a song, introduce a song. It doesn't cost you anything. All that you have to do is like potentially wake up at 6 a.m., have me call you and record, talk to Nick Cannon for 45 seconds, announce the song, and that's it. And basically you're promoting your business. So obviously that is now at this point in my career where I'm in commercial real estate and leasing, and I have to cold call people a lot. It really gave me experience in that regard where I'd be hung up on constantly. People would think I'm trying to sell them something. So that was a lot of the grind work that I had to do, after the show. A lot of Nick's going to be at this event, or one thing that comes to mind was we did a prom event where Nick got to take somebody to prom, and they won a contest. So set that whole thing up, get him down there, record audio for it, record video for it, do promotion for that, and Nick takes somebody to prom. And I was part of the producer role as well.
That's a lot of different hats, it sounds like, and that I can't believe people would hang up on you with the offer to be on the radio when you are not selling them anything. But people don't like to be cold call, so
they don't like to be cold called, and that was my thought too. You know what? You just lost a pretty good opportunity to have millions of people in the tri-state area hear your voice and your business, and you snooze, you lose.
So while you're doing these things, you're in your 20s, you're in New York, having I would assume a great time. It sounds like a wonderful time. Did you want to do this as a career? Did you eye real estate, saying that want to be my next move, or what was the thought as far as a career with this line of work?
So I loved the radio, and I had a great time doing it. I saw myself pursuing this. After a while, I realized that you kind of had to get your foot in the door in this regard. You had to kind of move out to Boise and do a 2 a.m. slot with nobody really listening and not get paid any money. I was at that time willing to do that too. But then it didn't work out in the morning show. I ended up getting let go from that, which ended up being a blessing. And from there, I started putting out a bunch of feelers, and I got an internship at a new TV show called Born to Explore. It aired on ABC, and it was a travel, exploration, adventure show. It kind of ran reminded me very much of like a rated G um, Anthony Bourdain show, where you try the foods, you try the experiences, you meet the people. So I started as an intern doing that. And at the same time doing that, I was also teaching video production at my local TV station, local free TV station, and coaching Little League, teaching like tutoring Little League, and valet parking at night. So I was really trying to do whatever I could to pay the rent at that point. But I got this internship, made the best of it. After a while, it became like an associate producer. And then after a while after that, I became producer. And I was at that show for, I want to say about probably 4 years. Got to go to the Emmys a bunch of times, got to travel around the world. And that opened the door to the radio, getting let go from the radio opened the door to the TV world for me, which was super exciting. With the TV world, I realized quickly that you got to be kind of be looking for your next job like 2 jobs out. There's no security. There's a lot of haves and have-nots, and or there's very few haves and a lot of have-nots. So you got to be grinding like crazy for that. It later in my career in the show, my wife and I got pregnant, and my father-in-law lived up here in Massachusetts and was always in the development side, the construction side of commercial real estate. So I had 100 contacts, and suggested that I give this a go. He always saw me as on the broker side of things, on the leasing side of things. So I moved up with no jobs, no prospect. Fortunately, lived with them for a short time, but I started a spreadsheet of all these meetings I went to, and I met as many people as I possibly could. And it took over a year to get a job in real estate, but I finally landed one. And while during that time that I was waiting, I was building solar fields in I was building one in Plimpton and in like the 10-degree weather outside, miserable conditions, but I needed a job. I needed to make money. So that's what I was doing.
You know, we did have a prep call and we covered some of this, and I forgot about the solar field part. And it strikes me now that I'm get the whole story, that A, how hard you work, and B, how tough it is with your first kid on the way. I've just moved to a new area. I know or have these contacts, and I'm trying to make this happen. But I'm willing to do what it takes, and I'm going to work my ass off to get it done. So it all comes together with being able to just kind of push through, get to the next thing, do a good job, and see where it takes me. But one thing I want to stress, I think we've got a lot of people who are listening, like, this guy's done a lot of cool stuff, and obviously he's worked hard. He's put himself in the right place, the right time. But as you mentioned, a year, that's like, can be a long time, and you're meeting with people in a new field, even if they are warmish contacts. How are you're tracking these meetings? How are you kind of walking into them with something valuable to add to the person that you're meeting with, where your background may not line up? Some people might say, well, you don't have any real estate experience. Why should I talk to you, help you out? Or what were those conversations like? And ultimately, how did you get to a place where it's like, I want to work here?
So it was always walking in. I knew that I didn't have experience. I wasn't going to pretend like I had experience. I knew not at all what I was talking about. So I just relied 100% on my personality. I would listen to what they were saying. I would try to interact in as many ways as possible. I always got people would always bust my chops about being from New York, being a Yankees fan, being a Giants fan. So we started off with that, which always went totally fine. Um, but at the end of most of these interviews, I really said, like, listen, I got no experience. I know that. You know that. I'm not going to try to pretend like I do. But I'll work my ass off for this, and I will mess up. But I promise you this: I won't mess up twice. And another thing I'll promise you is that if you hire me, you will not regret this. This will be a good decision on your part. Um, and after a year of a bunch of those conversations, or just getting advice, or getting, every time I had that conversation, I would get a few more contacts, and I would reach out to this person or schedule a call with this person. And then eventually I got hired by a company called RK Centers, a family company out of Needham, Massachusetts, that owns about 10 million square feet of retail shopping centers in New England and South Florida. I knew nothing about them. In all my meetings and interactions and everything like that, I had never come across them. I never heard of them. And then fortunately, one of my first meetings that I went to was with a guy from New York, upstate New York, who moved to Boston to get into real estate. He was a teacher and he wasn't making enough money. And he called me up. He's like, listen, I know this company, RK Centers, they're looking for somebody. Here's a contact. Why don't you call him? So I met with him and it worked out. Um, Funny story, actually, the way it worked out, the guy that I met with used to be an audio producer in he would travel around. He lived in Brooklyn, would travel around as an audio engineer, doing like freelance shoots, and do recordings of whatever it may be, an interview with this celebrity or a promo for this video. Um, the owner of the company at the time was like, I don't know about this guy. He doesn't have any experience. But the guy's name is Andrew Fish. He said to the owner, he's like, it's not the same skill, but these skills will translate to leasing. You got to think on your feet. You got to think quickly, and you got to react very quickly, and sometimes go over the line to get what you need done. So it's kind of amazing that it worked out that way, but it did.
Yeah, that's incredibly fortuitous to have Andrew there and to speak to you what your experience was and how it could translate. Because unfortunately, not a lot of people are willing to kind of make that leap. But as you've as you've established, you are somebody who's going to work hard and can fulfill that promise that you're not going to regret it. So that's really great how that worked out, and obviously it's worked out well because you're still there. Uh, what does your current day to day look like, and are you using any or a lot of what you learned beforehand, or what is it now that you're doing that you are happy to be doing there at RK?
Cold calling for sure. Um, it's never pleasant the first couple times you have to do it. Even if I take 2 weeks off from cold calling, those first one or two calls will be like a little strange. Um, and I will get hung up on constantly, but that's okay. That's part of the job. And just the ability to stay with that and know that what I have to offer is pretty good. And if there's an opportunity for somebody to take advantage, then there's an opportunity for both of us to succeed here. Um, Definitely that. Sometimes it's like the long hours, like waking up super early to get to a showing that's in Southington, Connecticut, and I gotta be on the road at 6 o'clock. So that's no problem at all for me. So some of those skills for sure, and also a skill that I got in the radio station was just interacting with strangers constantly and having to be kind of quick response, digest what they're saying and spit something back out quickly. And I feel like being traveling around the tri-state, meeting strangers, rich people, poor people, people from all over the place, just having that skill really helped me develop my sales skills, I think, with real estate now.
And that makes sense. Those are certainly transferable skills, and it helps to be able to quickly answer regardless who's in front of you. If you know what you're talking about, how you can help them out, or at least point them in the right direction. And your experience certainly speaks to that. One thing that is tough for me, and I think for most people, is that getting hung up on, or that constant, cold interaction. Is there a trick, or you mentioned even after a couple weeks not doing it, that it's still difficult? Is there something that you would help somebody else who's starting, or it's like, if you think about it this way or try this out, this might help get you over what's ailing you or what's keeping you from trying?
It is knowing that you're going to get hung up on eventually, and just having the ability for yourself to say that's all right, like on to the next one. It's You don't know this person, you're likely never going to meet this person. They mean nothing to you, you mean nothing to them. You might have caught this person on when they're having a terrible day. Their dog might have just got hit by a car, so they're in a terrible mood. You never know what someone's going through. um so you just move on to the next one. You have something that's good, and even if it's not that good, you know what? You got a job to do and you're getting paid to do it. So you make the phone call. And that's kind of, how it goes. Do you want to eat or you not want to eat? Yeah.
Well, and just to clarify, and there were no dogs that were harmed hit in this
No.
during this episode, and the purple Suburban did not hit anybody driving through the streets of Manhattan either. So I just want to put that for the record. But that is good advice, because I think a lot of people, including myself, will get hung up on this is going to be terrible. I don't know. And don't mean to say hung up on, but this is going to go so poorly, or they're going to yell at me. They're not going to talk to me. They're going to hang up the phone. And ultimately, if you're going with something that might be useful to them, if you can provide in a way and they talk to you, great. And if not, it's a phone call. It's over. It's not as if it's they're standing right in front of you or it's going to be some prolonged interaction because it's once it's hung up, it's done. So good advice there.
What was that? 20 seconds out of your day, right? I mean, you're on to the next one.
Exactly, exactly. So we've talked a good amount about your professional endeavors, how you have had the opportunity to do a lot of cool things and have good stories. How did you meet your wife?
I met my wife at Quinnipiac. Actually, believe it or not, after a hockey game. Um, this is when they had just basically probably their second year in the ECAC, which was a big. They came from the hockey program grew from nothing pretty much. They decided to invest heavily, build this brand new arena. It was called the TD Bank Garden at the time, or no, the TD Bank North Sports Center, I think it was. And it was a beautiful hockey facility right next to a beautiful basketball facility. And I just so happened, I was a transfer student actually. I went to URI for 2 years, University of Rhode Island, transferred to Quinnipiac for broadcast journalism. And when I went there, I lived in this off campus owned, is university owned off campus house. So we a bunch of students had different houses, and we had an RA at the end of the street who had a house with roommates there too. But my house was at the top of this hill, and also at the top of this hill was the brand new arena. So I used to go to as many hockey games as I possibly could. It was super fun. Then it was this bar named it was called Dickerman's, and I went. I had met some of her friends there. I went with some of my friends, and then I met Lindsay, my wife, at the bar afterwards. Um, and we started flirting a little bit. I got a number. She'll tell you that she asked me out. She's obviously wrong. I 100% asked her out, and it went from there.
I do attend. I have a tendency to bury the lead and find out something incredible that I want to ask you. So many questions at the end of the interview, which I've done again here. One thing I've done for myself during this conversation is you and I have a lot in common that we have not discussed. But I too met my wife in a bar my junior year of college, so we'll have to pick that up some other time. But one thing I am interested about transferring as a junior, what is that like as far as getting plugged into the social scene? The hockey games must be a good way to interact with people, but what is it like showing up on a campus when most everybody you're going to meet with has been there for 2 years?
It was when I was at URI, I was planning to room with one of my best friends from high school, and I did. Somehow we shared a bathroom. So there was like dorm, you had two or three people, you share a bathroom, and then it's connected to another room. Somehow the other room had someone that I went to high school with. Another guy that I went to high school with, wasn't super friendly with. So I had like a small group there. I knew another guy at Quinnipiac that I was trying to live with. So I ended up living with him. He didn't have like not a ton of friends there at the time. He had a very small group, but it's the same thing that, with cold calling or with really anything. You just kind of got to put yourself out there. And the worst is going to happen. Like, these people don't know you. So what? You look like, you look like an idiot for 10 minutes, or you start like an awkward conversation and then you walk away. It took me a while to kind of always think about when you yourself are in a conversation, you're thinking like, oh my God, I'm wondering like if I'm stuttering, if I sound weird, if I have something in my teeth. That person's worrying about the same thing that you are. They're not worried. They're not even considering the other side of the table. So if you could start to think in that way, it's super helpful. And that's what I did. I went to as many hockey games as I could, or I would meet up with somebody from class. Or when I went to Quinnipiac to live with one of my hometown friends, we had another roommate. Met his friends that he established over the 2 years at Quinnipiac. And some of those friends, like I have a wedding coming up in October of a guy that I met through him, that I'm in his wedding party. So it's just putting yourself out there like that and taking chances, really.
And this kind of ties everything together. And I don't want to be corny about it, but being able to show up, not care necessarily how it goes, being your best self and just giving it a shot, working hard, it seems to be a common theme that has come up for you. And I don't want to say this was the beginning of it, but this certainly was it. I think I know plenty of people who have transferred. It's like, this is the worst. I don't know anybody. I'm not going to put myself out there. I'm not going to try those things. And they have a horrible experience where you had the exact opposite, and it's replayed itself multiple times in your career and probably throughout your life. So very well done. I'm glad that came out, and I'm glad we could talk about that. While we have kind of jumped around and been all over the place, I think we've covered a good amount of ground. But Louis, is there anything I didn't ask you that I probably should have before we get out of here tonight?
I think we pretty much covered it. Had a lot of jobs, done a lot of cool stuff, weird stuff, whatever it may be. I always look back on all my when times were like difficult when I was working, valet parking late at night in freezing cold weather, standing outside. I would always kind of think to myself like, this is this is making me better. When I'm in a nice house with heat on, not freezing cold, not struggling, I'm going to look back on these days and think like, oh, that was fun. That was a good time. That was a different time in my life. And I do at this, even today, I still do. And I'm not crushing it by any means, but I own a house, I have a family, and things could be way worse for me. But I do look back often and think like, wow, I've come like a long way. It was tough then, and it's getting easier.
It's fantastic perspective, and I love that mindset. Here's where we'll end. If there is we're March of 2022 right now. If there's a kid who's about to graduate from college, looking to break into, well, say some sort of media career, some place where they're going to have to put themselves out there, they're going to try and be told no many times. What advice would you give them, or what would you want them to know to say this is going to help you out more than you realize as long as you work hard or you keep trying?
One thing I feel very strongly about is that you're not above anything. Like, so what? You have a college degree or something like that. Like, everybody's got a college degree right now. It doesn't really mean that much anymore. You're not above handing out stickers, getting your foot in the door, or doing something that you might not want to do. I'm not saying anything like illegal or anything like that, but to do something that's maybe not super fun, or it's really hard, or it might make you feel uncomfortable or awkward. Like you're not above that. Like I'm not above walking around. Even today, I'm not above walking around a shopping center that I'm doing leasing for and picking up trash that's on the ground, because I want it to look nice, and I want um, it reflects the shopping center reflects me and what I'm trying to lease and what I'm trying to do. So I would say you're not above anything, and also like just put yourself out there. If somebody says no, try again. If you don't get a response, try again. If you get hung up on, maybe call them back and said, "Oh, we must have had a bad connection there. Sorry about that. It must have been my fault. Let me continue with what I was saying." And if you get hung up again, then all right, so you move on. But just put yourself out there, and just keep trying.
Excellent advice. Louis, I appreciate it. This has been a ton of fun. I wish you nothing but the best, and I look forward to doing this again.
Thanks so much, Mike. Appreciate everything.